Sea War Museum in northern Denmark says it has found a missing Nazi submarine.
In 1945, the world celebrated victory over Nazi Germany. Hitler was dead. The war was over. But deep beneath the icy waters of the South Atlantic, secrets were sinking into darkness. 2 German submarines surfaced in Argentina months after surrender, their crews refusing to explain where they had been.
Divers have made quite a discovery off Nantucket Island in Massachusetts, the wreck of a German U-boat.
Now, decades later, something has been found on the ocean floor near Patagonia. Something that was immediately classified for 100 years, the signal from the deep. In the harsh waters off the coast of Patagonia, where the South Atlantic meets the rocky shores of Argentina, the conditions are brutal. Strong currents sweep through underwater canyons. The water temperature hovers just above freezing. Visibility is poor, and the pressure at depth crushes anything not built to withstand it. This is not a place where casual explorers venture. This is a place where the ocean keeps its darkest secrets. A private oceanographic team was conducting routine work in these waters. Their mission was simple and unglamorous. They were mapping the seabed to prepare for the installation of a new fiber optic cable. This kind of work happens all the time around the world. Companies need precise maps of the ocean floor to avoid obstacles and plan safe routes for their cables. The team was using sophisticated sonar equipment that could create detailed 3-dimensional images of everything beneath them. Day after day, they scanned the rocky bottom, cataloging geological features and underwater formations. It was tedious work, the kind of job where nothing unusual ever happens. Until something unusual happened. The sonar picked up an anomaly. At first, the engineers assumed it was a natural formation, perhaps an unusual rock outcropping or a ridge they had not seen before. But as they processed the data and refined the image, the shape became clearer. This was not a rock. This was not a geological feature. The object had smooth, artificial contours. It was elongated and symmetrical, shaped like a massive spindle lying on its side in a deep depression on the ocean floor. The object measured more than 80 meters long. It was resting at a depth where sunlight never penetrates, hidden in perpetual darkness, as if someone had deliberately placed it there to avoid detection. The engineers rechecked their equipment. They ran the scan again. The result was the same. When deep water drones equipped with powerful lights descended to investigate, their cameras revealed the truth. The object was covered in rust and encrusted with decades of marine growth. Barnacles and other organisms had colonized its surface, evidence that it had been resting there for a very long time. But beneath the biological layer, the shape was unmistakable. It was a submarine. The discovery sent ripples through the small community of marine historians and naval experts who were quietly informed. A World War II-era submarine lying undiscovered off the coast of Argentina was remarkable enough. But this vessel had characteristics that did not match any known type. Its hull was unusually smooth, its design atypical of the combat submarines that had prowled the Atlantic during the war. And here was the most troubling detail of all. When researchers checked the official records of every submarine lost during the war, this one appeared on no list. The Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, had meticulous records of their submarine fleet. The Allies had equally detailed documentation of every enemy vessel they had sunk or captured. This submarine existed in none of those archives. According to every official record in existence, this vessel should not be here. It should not exist at all. Within days, an expedition was being organized under the strictest secrecy. The area was about to be sealed off from the public. And a mystery that had been sleeping on the ocean floor for nearly 80 years was about to wake up. The broadcast that went dark. The Argentine government moved quickly once the magnitude of the discovery became clear. Under the pretense of routine technical work, the area around the wreck was closed to all civilian shipping. 3 corvettes of the Argentine Navy established a perimeter, their crews instructed to turn away any vessel that approached. No explanations were given. No press releases were issued. As far as the outside world knew, nothing unusual was happening in those cold southern waters. Beneath the surface, a different story was unfolding. A specially equipped expedition vessel arrived on site, carrying the latest in deep-sea exploration technology. Remote-operated vehicles with high-definition cameras and precision robotic arms were deployed to the wreck. These machines could operate at crushing depths, their movements controlled by expert pilots watching video feeds in real time. The ROV descended through the darkness, its powerful lights cutting through the black water like searchlights. As it approached the wreck, details emerged on the monitors. The hull was in surprisingly good condition despite decades of submersion. The cold water and lack of oxygen at this depth had slowed the decay process. Marine growth covered much of the surface, but the essential structure remained intact. The cameras panned along the length of the vessel, and the experts in the situation room grew quiet. This submarine was not a standard combat vessel. Its lines were too smooth, too refined. Standard German U-boats were functional machines designed for warfare, bristling with deck guns and torpedo tubes. This craft had none of those features. Its hull was streamlined in a way that suggested a different purpose entirely. The ROV located what appeared to be a large cargo hatch near the stern of the vessel. The robotic arms extended, brushing away decades of sediment and growth to expose the metal beneath. The pilot maneuvered carefully, preparing to attempt entry into the vessel's interior. The arms applied pressure. There was resistance at first, then a slight movement, more pressure. The seal that had held for decades began to give way, and then every screen in the room went black. At first, no one moved. Technical failures were common at such depths. The pressure, the cold, the distance from the surface all conspired against reliable communication. Someone suggested they had lost the feed temporarily. Engineers began checking connections and running diagnostics, but the screens remained dark. Minutes passed, then hours. The ROV was not responding to commands. The video feed did not return. When a backup drone was deployed to investigate, it found the original ROV motionless near the hatch, its systems completely dead. What happened next remains unclear to this day. The official record states only that the operation was suspended due to equipment failure, but witnesses reported seeing frantic activity on the expedition vessel, followed by encrypted communications with Buenos Aires that lasted through the night. 3 days later, the Argentine government issued a statement. It was brief, almost insultingly so, given the magnitude of what had been found. Everything recovered from the unidentified underwater object, as well as all information regarding its exact location and origin, was classified as a state secret for a period of 100 years. The files would not be opened until the year 2125. 100 years. A full century of silence. To understand what actually happened, we must travel back in time to the final days of the Third Reich, when 2 German submarines made impossible journeys to Argentina and refused to explain what they had been doing. The submarines that refused to die. The date was July 10, 1945. The war in Europe had been over for 2 months. Germany had surrendered unconditionally on May 8th, an event celebrated around the world as Victory in Europe Day. The Nazi leadership was either dead or in Allied custody awaiting trial at Nuremberg. The guns had fallen silent. The fighting was finished. And yet, on that summer day, a German submarine surfaced in the Argentine port of Mar del Plata, as if the war had never ended. The vessel was U-530, a Type 9C 40 ocean-going submarine designed for long-range patrols. Its commander was a young officer named Otto Vermuth, only 24 years old. He calmly surrendered his boat and crew to the stunned Argentine authorities, who could hardly believe what they were seeing. A German U-boat arriving unannounced 2 months after the war's conclusion. The immediate question was obvious. Where had they been? U-530 had departed from Norway on March 3, 1945, carrying a full complement of torpedoes for operations against Allied shipping. The submarine had conducted attacks near the American coast between May 4th and 7th, just days before Germany's surrender. When news of the capitulation reached Vermuth by radio on May 8th, he made a fateful decision. He would not surrender to the British or Americans. Instead, he would sail for Argentina, hoping for more sympathetic treatment. The irregularities multiplied the more investigators looked. When Argentine and later American intelligence officers examined the submarine, they discovered that crucial items were missing. The ship's log, called the Kriegstagebuch, which should have recorded every mile traveled and every order given, had been destroyed. The deck gun had been removed and thrown overboard. All the crew's personal documents, their identification papers, letters from home, and photographs were gone. Even the code books and navigation charts had been destroyed. 54 men had arrived on that submarine, and not one of them possessed any identification. It was as if their very identities had been erased. Wormuth and his crew were interrogated extensively, first by Argentine authorities and then by American intelligence officers who flew in specifically for this purpose. The questioning went on for days. The sailors told the same story over and over. They had simply wanted to avoid surrendering to the British or Americans. They had heard Argentina was neutral and hoped for better treatment there. That was all. The world press exploded with speculation. Newspapers on both sides of the Atlantic ran sensational headlines suggesting that U-530 had carried Nazi leaders to safety in South America. Some claimed Adolf Hitler himself had been aboard. The submarine, they said, had landed its precious cargo on some remote stretch of the Patagonian coast before surrendering to create a distraction. These theories were never proven, but they were never definitively disproven either. The crew maintained their story through every interrogation, and without the ship's log, there was no way to trace their actual movements. Then, just over a month later, it happened again. On August 17, 1945, another German submarine appeared in Mar del Plata. This one was U-977, commanded by an even younger officer named Heinz Schäfer. He was just 24 years old, the same age as Wormuth, and his story was even more incredible. According to Schäfer, U-977 had departed from Norway on May 2, 1945, 6 days before Germany's surrender. When news of the capitulation reached them, Schäfer gathered his crew and offered them a choice. They could surrender to the British, or they could attempt an almost impossible journey to Argentina. 16 men, mostly older sailors with families waiting at home, chose to leave. They were put ashore near the Norwegian coast and eventually captured by British forces. The remaining 32 men embarked on what would become one of the most remarkable submarine voyages in history. Schäfer claimed that his submarine traveled submerged for 66 consecutive days using a device called a snorkel to run the diesel engines without fully surfacing. The snorkel was a tube that extended above the waterline, allowing the submarine to draw in air and expel exhaust while remaining just below the surface. It was technology that the Germans had perfected late in the war, but using it for such an extended period was almost unheard of. Schäfer later wrote a book about the voyage titled U-977, which detailed the harrowing journey. He maintained throughout his life that he was simply trying to avoid surrender, that there was no secret mission, no hidden cargo, no Nazi leaders aboard. He died in 1979 still insisting on his innocence. But like Wormuth, Schäfer had destroyed his ship's log. And like Wormuth, he could not satisfactorily explain all the time that had elapsed during his journey. The official interrogation reports noted inconsistencies in his account. One U.S. Navy assessment mentioned surface travel that contradicted his claims of constant submersion. 2 submarines arriving at the same Argentine port within weeks of each other, both commanded by young officers, both with destroyed logs and missing documentation. Coincidence seemed impossible. Conspiracy theorists saw a pattern, and a legend was born. The legend of the Fuhrer's convoy, a secret fleet of submarines that carried the leadership and treasures of the Third Reich to safety while the world celebrated victory. The Fuhrer's convoy, the stories of U-530 and U-977 were just the beginning. As details emerged and investigators dug deeper, a much larger theory began to take shape. This was not about 2 rogue submarines making desperate runs for freedom. This was about a coordinated operation of unprecedented scale. According to the theory that developed over subsequent decades, the Nazi leadership had prepared for defeat long before it arrived. They knew the war was lost, perhaps as early as 1943, when the tide turned at Stalingrad, and they began making plans to ensure their survival. The centerpiece of these plans was allegedly a secret submarine convoy. Not just 2 boats, but dozens, perhaps as many as 80 of the most advanced submarines in the German fleet, loaded with everything needed to rebuild the Reich in exile. This theory was not entirely without foundation. Germany did possess revolutionary submarine technology at the end of the war. The Type 21 submarine, called the Electroboot or electric boat, represented a quantum leap in underwater warfare. Unlike conventional submarines that spent most of their time on the surface and only submerged to attack or evade, the Type 21 was designed to operate primarily underwater. The specifications were remarkable. While a standard Type 7 submarine could manage about 7 knots while submerged, the Type 21 could reach over 17 knots underwater, actually faster than it could travel on the surface. Its streamlined hull eliminated the deck guns and external features that created draggy on older designs. Its massive battery capacity allowed it to remain submerged for days at a time. Its silent creeping motors could propel it through the water without detection. Germany managed to build 118 of these boats before the war ended. But here is the crucial detail that fueled decades of speculation. Only 4 became fully combat-ready. Only 2 actually went on war patrols, and neither sank a single ship. What happened to the rest? The official history says that most were scuttled by their own crews in the final days of the war during Operation Regenbogen, or Rainbow. Admiral Dönitz ordered the destruction of the submarine fleet, rather than let these advanced vessels fall into Allied hands. Records indicate that approximately 84 Type 21 submarines were deliberately sunk. The theory grew more elaborate over time. According to believers, the convoy carried not just high-ranking Nazis, but entire treasure troves. Gold from the Reichsbank, art masterpieces looted from across Europe, secret weapons research, and documentation that could compromise powerful people in multiple countries. Some submarines were allegedly converted into transports, their torpedo tubes removed to make room for cargo. Others carried scientists and engineers, the human capital needed to continue research programs in exile. And one submarine, specially modified with enhanced security and the finest crew available, supposedly carried Adolf Hitler himself, along with Eva Braun. The legend drew on real historical facts to lend it credibility. The Odessa network did exist. Former SS members did organize to help war criminals escape prosecution. The rat lines through Italy and Spain were real, documented escape routes that delivered thousands of Nazis to South America. Juan Perón's Argentina really did welcome war criminals, providing them with new identities and protection from extradition. Adolf Eichmann, one of the primary architects of the Holocaust, escaped to Argentina and lived there for years before Israeli agents captured him in 1960. Josef Mengele, the notorious Angel of Death who conducted horrific experiments at Auschwitz, fled to South America and died a free man in Brazil in 1979. Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon, lived openly in Bolivia until the 1980s. These were not theories. These were documented facts. If so many Nazi criminals could escape, conspiracy theorists asked, why not Hitler himself? But to accept the theory of Hitler's escape, one had to believe something even more fantastic, that the Fuhrer had a destination far more remote than Argentina, a secret base at the end of the earth where he could wait until the time was right to return. Base 211 and the Ice Fortress. In December 1938, Germany launched an expedition to the frozen continent at the bottom of the world. The ship Schwabenland departed Hamburg carrying 82 crew members, sophisticated aerial survey equipment, and 2 seaplanes that could be launched by catapult. The expedition arrived in Antarctica in January 1939 and spent approximately 3 weeks surveying the region. The 2 seaplanes conducted 15 photographic missions, capturing thousands of aerial images of the ice-covered landscape. They discovered mountain ranges that had never been mapped and an ice-free area called the Schirmacher Oasis. To mark their territorial claims, the crew dropped aluminum darts with swastika emblems at various points along their flight paths. Germany named the region Neuschwabenland, or New Swabia, and formally claimed it as German territory. The expedition returned home in April 1939, just months before the invasion of Poland would plunge the world into war. These are documented historical facts. What happened next belongs entirely to legend. According to conspiracy theorists, The 1938 expedition was not simply about whale oil. It was reconnaissance for something far more ambitious. German scientists supposedly discovered vast caverns beneath the Antarctic ice, warmed by geothermal activity and fed by underground rivers that never froze. These natural caves provided the perfect location for a secret base, invisible to aerial reconnaissance and accessible only to those who knew the hidden passages. Construction allegedly began in secret during the war years. Submarines brought equipment, supplies, and personnel. A city took shape beneath the ice, equipped with everything needed for long-term survival. Living quarters, laboratories, manufacturing facilities, and hangars for advanced aircraft. The base was given the designation Station 211, though believers also called it New Berlin. When the war turned against Germany, this Antarctic fortress became the fallback position. The Fuhrer's convoy was not heading to Argentina at all. Argentina was merely a waypoint, a place to transfer cargo and personnel to submarines capable of reaching the ice continent. The final destination was Base 211, where the Nazi elite would wait out the aftermath of defeat, preserving their technology and ideology until the world forgot about them. Some versions of the legend went even further. They claimed that German scientists had developed advanced flying craft, disc-shaped vehicles that could outperform any conventional aircraft. These flying saucers, as they came to be called, were stored at Base 211 along with other secret weapons that had never been deployed during the war. The expedition ended earlier than planned, and believers claimed this was because American forces had encountered something unexpected. Admiral Byrd supposedly gave an interview to a Chilean newspaper in which he warned about enemy aircraft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. This quote has been repeated in countless conspiracy publications as proof that Byrd encountered Nazi flying saucers at Base 211. The truth is more mundane. The expedition ended early due to approaching Antarctic winter and deteriorating weather conditions. Several aircraft were lost to crashes, not combat. The Byrd quote, when traced to its source, turns out to be a mistranslation of a warning about Soviet long-range bombers, not mysterious polar aircraft. But the absence of evidence for the most fantastic claims does not mean that all secrets were revealed. Real researchers continued searching for answers closer to shore, and what they found proved that the Argentine coast still held mysteries. The missing link. One of the most dedicated of these researchers is Abel Basti, an Argentine historian and journalist who has spent decades investigating Nazi activities in South America. His organization, called Eslabon Perdido, or The Missing Link, has conducted systematic searches along the Argentine coast, looking for evidence that official histories have overlooked. Basti's theory is that U-530 and U-977 were not rogue submarines acting on their own initiative. They were part of a larger operation, and their surrender was deliberately staged to draw attention away from other vessels that arrived secretly and were never documented. This theory has some basis in logic. If other submarines did land passengers or cargo on remote stretches of the Patagonian coast, the Argentine government would have had strong reasons to cover it up. Juan Perón's regime was actively recruiting German specialists, scientists, and military men whose expertise could benefit Argentina. Acknowledging that U-boats had secretly landed on Argentine territory would have created diplomatic problems with the Allies and raised uncomfortable questions about what exactly had been delivered. Basti and his team have collected testimony from elderly residents of coastal communities who remember unusual events from the mid-1940s. One farmer reported that his father had witnessed men in dark uniforms on a deserted beach at night, being met by trucks running without headlights. Another recalled strange submarine sightings that were never reported in newspapers. These accounts are anecdotal and cannot be independently verified, but they paint a picture of secretive activity that never made it into official records. More compelling than witness testimony is the physical evidence that Basti's team has found. In 2022, searchers using magnetometers and side-scan sonar located a large metallic object on the seafloor near Quequén, a port city about 300 kilometers south of Mar del Plata. The object was clearly a vessel of some kind, too large to be a fishing boat, and with structural characteristics that suggested military origin. When Eslabon Perdido announced the find, and called for official investigation, the response from Argentine authorities was telling. Initial requests for information were simply ignored. When pressure mounted, officials issued statements dismissing the find as an old commercial vessel of no historical significance. The German embassy in Buenos Aires, asked to comment, stated that preliminary investigations showed no signs that the wreckage was a German submarine. Basti and his supporters remained unconvinced. They noted that the official denials came without any detailed examination of the evidence. No archaeological team was dispatched. No expert analysis was conducted. The dismissal seemed designed to close the matter without actually investigating it. This pattern of official indifference or active suppression has characterized the investigation of Nazi activities in Argentina since the war ended. The Siena Commission, an official government investigation conducted in the late 1990s, documented that at least 180 confirmed war criminals had found refuge in Argentina after 1945. Researcher Uki Gonyi, whose groundbreaking book, The Real Odessa, exposed the rat lines in detail, identified nearly 300. And now, decades later, the discovery of a mysterious submarine off the Patagonian coast suggested that the ocean floor held answers that official archives would never provide. What was found in those sealed compartments required 100 years of secrecy, and leaked information painted a picture more disturbing than any conspiracy theory: the personal ark. According to unofficial information that has emerged from sources connected to the classified expedition, the submarine found near Patagonia was unlike anything in the historical record. It was not a combat vessel of any known type. It carried no torpedoes, mounted no deck guns, and showed no signs of ever having been configured for warfare. Instead, this submarine appeared to have been purpose-built for a single mission: long-distance travel with maximum comfort and stealth. Its hull was longer than standard U-boats, with smoother lines and more spacious interior compartments. The engineering priorities were clearly different from those of a warship. This was not a weapon. This was transportation. When remote-operated vehicles finally breached the sealed cargo compartments, they did not find gold bars or secret weapons. They found something far more personal and far more disturbing. The first compartment had been configured as a preservation chamber equipped with systems to control humidity and protect contents from deterioration. Inside were paintings, dozens of them sealed in protective frames. Art experts who glimpsed the images before the video feed was cut recognized works from Adolf Hitler's personal collection. These were not randomly looted pieces. They were paintings that Hitler himself had specifically chosen, works that reflected his personal aesthetic vision. Many had been considered lost or destroyed in the chaos of Berlin's fall. The second compartment contained architectural models, detailed scale representations of buildings that had never been constructed. Experts identified them as components of Germania, the grandiose rebuilding of Berlin that Hitler and his architect Albert Speer had planned. The centerpiece was a model of the Volkshalle, or People's Hall, a domed structure designed to be so massive that it would have its own weather system inside. There was also a model of a triumphal arch intended to dwarf the one in Paris. Inside were personal effects, uniforms of the specific cut and style associated with the highest ranks of the Nazi leadership, books bearing handwritten notes in the margins, and at the center of the compartment, mounted on a special pedestal, two sealed containers of stainless steel. The first container held medical records, complete documentation of treatments and medications spanning years, X-rays, test results, prescription lists, notes from consultations. Experts identified these as the files of Hitler's personal physician, Theodor Morell, the doctor notorious for pumping the Fuhrer full of stimulants and questionable treatments. Morell's records had been the subject of intense interest since the war ended. He had been captured and interrogated by American intelligence, providing detailed information about Hitler's declining health. But much of his documentation was believed lost. If these records were authentic, they represented a comprehensive medical history that could demystify the Fuhrer's physical and mental deterioration in his final years. The second container, lined with velvet, held jewelry and a book. The jewelry was identified as pieces known to have belonged to Eva Braun. The book was her personal diary. The Argentine government, whose history is already shadowed by its complicity in sheltering war criminals, recognized the danger. They chose to seal the discovery away, hoping that 100 years of distance would rob these objects of their power to inspire evil. The ocean keeps its secrets well, but not forever. What do you think lies in those sealed archives? What other discoveries might still be waiting beneath the waves? Share your thoughts in the comments below.